She walked down the aisle, glowing like a promise I'd waited my whole life to keep. The church shimmered in gold and white, soft music floating through the air as Ada took each careful step toward me. Her smile was gentle, so full of peace it almost hurt to look at. The bouquet trembled slightly in her hands, and for a moment I thought I saw the future in her eyes. Friends and family lined both sides, faces bright with joy. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. She was everything I'd prayed for, and now she was walking toward me, toward forever. I smiled, thinking of how far we had come, every struggle, every tear, every moment that led to this one. If only I knew that smile would be my last as a free man. The sunlight poured through the stained glass windows, casting warm colors over my suit. I felt the world slow down, like time itself was giving us its blessing. But behind that warmth, something unseen was waiting, a shadow I couldn't feel yet.
I turned and saw handcuffs instead of a ring. One moment, I was reaching for Ada's hand. The next, a cold touch wrapped around my wrist. The click of the metal echoed louder than the choir ever could. I looked up, confusion flooding my chest as the officer's grip tightened. Ada stood behind him, her eyes wide, bouquet slipping slightly from her hand. I wanted to ask what was happening, but my voice got lost somewhere between disbelief and heartbreak. The light that once felt warm now faded into something cold, almost cruel. The crowd murmured, cameras flashed, and my world ended right there at the altar. Voices blurred together, whispers, gasps, the rustle of fabric as people stood. Phones rose into the air like weapons of truth. Every flash burned another memory into my mind. 2 officers led me down the same aisle Ada had just walked, my wrists bound, my heart shattering with each step. I could still see her through the tears, crying, trembling, but frozen in place. The church that once celebrated love had turned into a courtroom. Let me take you back to how it all began. We met on a rainy evening at a cafe. I remember it so clearly. The rain tapping softly against the glass, the smell of fresh coffee filling the air. She was sitting by the window, her head buried in a book, a quiet smile dancing on her lips. I walked in, drenched and nervous, but the moment she looked up, everything else disappeared. Her eyes met mine, gentle, curious, and in that instant, I felt something shift inside me. I didn't know it then, but that rainy evening would become the start of everything, and the reason for my undoing.
She was perfect, gentle, kind, and everything I ever prayed for. We sat across from each other, the air warm with the smell of coffee and rain. She laughed softly at my terrible jokes, her fingers tracing the rim of her cup. There was something so calm about her, like she carried peace wherever she went. Every word she spoke felt honest, every smile genuine. I remember thinking, this is what love is supposed to feel like. Effortless. That night, I knew I had found my forever. The rain had stopped when we stepped outside. The street shimmered under the streetlights, puddles reflecting the city's glow. Ada held the umbrella, and I walked close, maybe too close, just to feel her warmth. We talked about everything and nothing. She told me her dreams, and I promised to help her chase them. When she laughed, I knew. In that quiet, rain-washed street, I knew I'd spend my life trying to keep that smile alive. When I proposed, she cried before saying yes. It was at her favorite restaurant. Soft lights, slow music, and the scent of roses everywhere. My hands trembled as I held the ring, my heart pounding like it wanted to speak for me. When I knelt down, time froze. Ada gasped, her hands over her mouth, tears filling her eyes before I even spoke the words. And when she nodded through those tears, I felt the world finally align. I thought love had finally smiled on me. She hugged me so tight I could barely breathe, and I didn't want to. The ring glimmered softly on her finger as she whispered, "I love you." Everyone around us clapped, but I only heard her voice. For the first time in a long while, I believed happiness was real. If only I knew it wouldn't last.
The police stormed in, shouting my name like I was a criminal. One moment, the pastor was asking if I would take Ada as my wife. The next, the heavy church doors slammed open, bam, and the sound echoed through the hall. Uniformed officers rushed in, their voices sharp, cutting through the music. They were shouting my name, like I was some wanted man. Everyone froze. Ada's hands slipped from mine, her eyes wide with confusion. I just stood there, stunned, as the world around me began to blur. Before I could even understand, they had me in handcuffs. I remembered the cold steel against my wrists before I even realized what was happening. One officer grabbed my arm, another pulled me away from the altar. The guests gasped, murmuring. Ada cried out, but her voice felt distant, swallowed by the noise. I kept asking, "What's going on? There must be a mistake." But no one listened. The music had stopped, the laughter gone, replaced by the rattling sound of handcuffs where a wedding ring was supposed to be. Everyone looked at me like I was a monster. I'll never forget their faces, the pity, the judgment, the shock. People I called friends whispered behind their hands, pulling their phones out, recording every second. Even Ada, she just stood there, tears streaming, unable to move closer. Her eyes, those soft, gentle eyes, now looked at me like she didn't know who I was. I wanted to scream that I was innocent, but in that moment, surrounded by silence and flashing cameras, I felt more alone than ever. They said I defrauded a company of millions. Outside, the air was thick and heavy. The police van waited, its doors open like a trap. Reporters were already there, shouting my name, snapping pictures. "Fraudster groom," one of them yelled. I tried to explain, to anyone who had listened, that there had been a mistake. But all I got were cold stares and questions I couldn't answer. They pushed me into the van, my wedding suit torn, my future slipping away with every flash of a camera.
I kept saying I was innocent, but no one listened. The interrogation room was small, the air heavy with the smell of paper and sweat. A single bulb hung above me, humming quietly as if mocking my silence. I'd repeated the same words for hours. I didn't do it. Please, I'm innocent. But the officer across the table just kept writing, not even looking up. Every question felt like a trap. Every word I spoke disappeared into the void. By the time they dragged me out, my throat was dry, my heart heavier than the cuffs around my wrists. Even Ada never came to see me. Days turned into weeks and weeks into something longer, something that felt endless. Every time the guard said, "Visitor," I looked up, hoping to see her. But the chair across the glass stayed empty, time after time. I told myself she was hurt, maybe scared of the rumors, that she still loved me somewhere deep down. But as the silence stretched on, I began to wonder if love could really vanish that fast. The walls of that cell didn't just keep me in, they taught me how quiet heartbreak can be. Only Daniel, her brother, came sometimes, said she couldn't bear the shame. Daniel was the only familiar face I saw in months. He'd come with food and soft words, sitting across from me through the thick glass. He said Adichie couldn't bear to see me like this, that the whole thing had broken her. I wanted to believe him. His eyes looked honest, his tone steady. He promised to check on my lawyer and said he'd help me clear my name. And each time he left, I felt a strange mix of hope and gratitude, never suspecting that hope was the cruelest lie of all. A few months later, I was released, only to start afresh, all over. When the world sees you as a criminal, every door feels locked, even the ones you once owned the keys to. I took any job I can find, sometimes carrying cement at construction sites, sometimes fixing computers in small shops. I didn't care what it was, as long as I can earn something honest. At first, people avoided me. Whispers followed wherever I went. Some recognized me from the news, others just judged by the look on my face. But slowly, I learned to stop explaining myself. I began to save bit by bit. Every little thing I earned, I put away. And soon enough, I started a small phone repair stand at the corner of a busy street. It wasn't much, but it was mine. I would sit there all day, fixing screens and replacing parts, trying to fix my life the same way I fixed those broken phones. Then one evening, she walked into my shop. Not a Deche, someone else.
Her name was Chica, a journalist with a quiet smile and curious eyes. She came to fix her phone, but somehow we ended up talking for over an hour. She didn't look at me like I was broken. She didn't ask about the past. She just laughed, and for the first time in years, I laughed back. Days turned to weeks, and she became a reason to smile again. She'd often visit, bringing food or helping me rearrange my little shop. Her kindness was effortless, like sunlight that didn't need permission to shine. One night, as we walked home, she said softly, "You don't talk much about your past." I smiled. "Some stories are too heavy for the night breeze." She nodded. "When you're ready, I'll listen." Those words stayed with me, because for the first time, someone didn't want to judge my story. She wanted to understand it. And slowly, I began to believe that maybe life wasn't done with me yet. Maybe God was rewriting my story. Life was finally beginning to make sense again. My small phone stand had grown into a modest shop. Business was steady, and people were beginning to trust my hands again. Sometimes I'd even hear customers whisper, "That's the man who was once accused of fraud." But this time, they said it with respect, not pity. Chica was there through it all. Her encouragement, her patience, it gave me strength I didn't know I had left. But just when I thought the past had finally buried itself, it found a way to knock again. One afternoon, I was repairing a laptop for a new client, a middle-aged man who looked a bit too curious. As I finished, he said quietly, "You're that businessman, aren't you? The one who was arrested on his wedding day?" My heart skipped. I nodded slowly. That was a long time ago. He smiled faintly. "I remember your case. I worked at the bank handling your company's accounts back then." I froze. "Sir," I said, "they said I forged documents and moved funds, but no one ever showed proof." The man looked at me with a puzzled expression. "That's because the transactions weren't traced to your name. It was through an inside source. Someone close to you must have had access to your company files." The words hit me like thunder. I leaned forward. "What do you mean, someone close to me?" He hesitated. "I can't say much, but if you look into your company's old records, you'll find the truth. Whoever framed you didn't just take your money. They made sure you could never trace it." That night, I couldn't sleep. His words replayed in my mind over and over again. Someone close to me. I thought about everyone I knew back then. My partners, my staff, my friends. Daniel's face crossed my mind for a split second, but I pushed the thought away. No, Daniel had been there for me when no one else was. He couldn't have betrayed me. Still, something deep inside me refused to rest.
Who do you think was responsible? Watch out for part 2.